Unique in history, also in the history of revolutions, is the fact that Gesell informed the public at large with every detail of his intentions and measures. The people were to judge his plans and actions. This alone sufficed to curb speculators, because the success of speculation depends on secrecy and on the general ignorance of savers and workers as to the effect of the increase and decrease of money on prices, interest, and stocks. It also depends on the uncertainty of the uninformed as to whether the circulating volume of money is about to be increased or decreased. Day by day, Gesell published in the Munich papers popularly written articles giving information on the currency problem, on money, on freed money, on hoarding, on his exchange of telegrams with the Reichsbank, on the necessity of the reform of the money system, on the importance, cause, and cure of the interest problem, on the necessity of the property tax to permit a clean new start of economic life, on pensions for the aged, invalids, veterans, and mothers, on the stabilization of money's value, on the proposed international economic conference to solve the problem of foreign exchange, etc. Space does not permit even an outline of these articles. We must leave to later publication the accounts of these historical documents, and to give the evidence of prominent men of business and trade, public officials, men of science in favor of Gesell and his teachings, taken at the trial. Briefly, we want to state that while Gesell, with Kristen and Polinsky, worked untiringly for the revival of economic conditions, the forces intent on the downfall of the first Soviet government of Bavaria, the communists under Levin and his brother-in-law Levine on the one side, and the socialistic Hoffman government on the other side, were hard at work. On April 11th and 12th, there were street fights in Munich. Troops of the Hoffman government took the government buildings and imprisoned many members of the Central Council, while the communists arrested a number of eminent people, many of the nobility, and held them as hostages. The next day, the communists again obtained the upper hand after street fights with machine guns and bomb throwers. They retook the government buildings and the railway station, while their leader, Levine, in a meeting at the Hofbrauhaus, the famous beer cellar, declared the Central Council deposed. The legislative and executive power is transferred to a committee of action of 15 members. Levine was their president. Thus, the Communistic Soviet Republic of Bavaria was born. When Gesell and his two friends returned to their offices in the afternoon of April 13th, they found guards at the doors. They were allowed to enter, but the guards could not say anything about the reason of their presence. While writing a report to the Central Council on the proposed introduction of unhoardable money, the three were arrested. On their way to the prison, they learned that they were in protective custody, and rightly assuming that this was by order of the Bamberg government, they handed the officer of the guard a telegram to Minister Hoffman asking him to examine their economic program and entrust them with it. After midnight, they were awakened in their prison cell by violent street fighting. Suddenly, there was a loud noise in the corridors of the prison. Then their door was thrust open, and the three were liberated. The next morning, they were as usual in their offices, where they were informed that the communists were now masters of the situation, and that the moderates such as Nikisch and Landauer had been removed. This meant the end. Next day, they distributed their program of action at a meeting of the Munich Workers and Employees Council, still hoping to reconcile the two extreme factions and thus to avoid the bloody civil war. It was all in vain. The first action of the Bolshevist government under Levine was to declare a 10-day strike. These anti-capitalists could not understand that capitalism, the interest system, can only be overcome by untrammeled production of capital goods. They could not see that a strike of the workers meant increased power of the capitalistic forces of exploitation, just as a strike of money produces the same effect. For 2 weeks, the communistic government governed by strike and bloody terror. On May 1st, troops of the Hoffman government entered Munich. The following day, Gesell and Christen were arrested, but dismissed again for lack of charges, while Polinski had already left Munich during the Levine rule. On Sunday, May 5th, they were rearrested while on an excursion trip in the surroundings of Munich, and on their way back to Munich, although under guard, they were mobbed and manhandled. After questioning, they were again released with a certificate that no charge existed against them, and they should be left free.